There's a really old book titled Once Upon a Galaxy, a journal of the making of The Empire Strikes Back. In it, there's a very interesting quote by the director of The Empire Strikes Back himself, Irvin Kershner. When discussing the differences between the Empire and the Rebellion, he says, and I quote, "The rebels will not do anything to win. They will not sacrifice lives. They do not descend to the level of the enemy. It's possible to fight because you love, not because you hate." Now, if you recognize this quotation or something similar, it's because Rose Tico towards the end of The Last Jedi said something very similar.
That's how we're gonna win. Not fighting what we hate. Saving what we love.
Now, this isn't an accident. Rian Johnson himself heavily implied on Twitter that he got this quote from Irvin Kershner himself. Now, why do I bring this up? This scene in The Last Jedi is fairly disliked, and I don't blame a lot of the fans. This line in context of the scene is a little silly. Finn was sacrificing himself so the Resistance can fight another day, and throughout the whole movie there have been many other characters who chose to sacrifice their lives for the greater good as well. But if you were to just look at this line and completely ignore the context of when this line was said, I'm not sure there's a single line of dialogue in all of Star Wars that better represents the ideals of Star Wars. There are dozens of interviews with George Lucas where he talks about the core of Star Wars, the themes, the meaning behind Star Wars, and what the saga as a whole is supposed to represent. In all these interviews, he does say many different things, but the core message of all these interviews is the same. Star Wars is a story meant for kids. This is an undeniable fact, and for whatever reason this seems to offend a lot of people. Star Wars is for everyone, not just the men, but the women and the children too. But his primary demographic is for children. Now, why do this? Why target these films for kids? Well, George Lucas made these films for kids because he wanted to teach them what he felt were the important ideals human beings should strive for. When you are educating a child about the real world, there are some things that you will teach them that may make them uncomfortable. That's why we have stories like Star Wars that handle these mature themes in a very simple way. Now, people sometimes like to reply with images or videos of Ahsoka cutting off heads of a bunch of people or Anakin getting burned alive and using that as an argument that Star Wars is not for kids. I think a 12-year-old is usually mature enough where they can handle this type of violence. When Anakin is getting burned alive, it's a metaphor for showing what happens when you let hate take over. And no, George Lucas is not saying you will burn alive if you hate something, he is saying that hate and anger will consume you. When Jyn and Cassian die in Rogue One, it's a message that sometimes it's important to make sacrifices for the greater good. Star Wars is about many different things: love, acceptance, friendship, honesty, but my favorite one is compassion. I believe that compassion is a superpower. Now, you can choose to ignore what I'm about to say, or you can take it to heart, but from personal experience, I can tell you that if you choose to live a life where you try to be as compassionate as you can towards others, even towards people you may not like, you will be significantly happier. George Lucas himself would back me up on this. One of my favorite quotes of his is, "The best way to pursue happiness is to help other people. Nothing else will make you happier." Now, what does this have to do with Rose's quote? Well, that's essentially what Rose's quote represents. If you're going to do something, anything really, especially a fight, do it because you're defending something you love, not because you're trying to tear something you hate down. Given the nature of the internet nowadays, it's easy to just hate on something. Most people have the protection of sitting behind their screen where they don't have to face the consequences of their words. In my Mary Sue video, which is by far my most popular video, the amount of comments and dislikes I got from people who even admitted they haven't watched the video was expected, but it's still kind of surprising. The comment section of this video proves how toxic and hateful the internet can be. Now, I want to be clear, just because you dislike the video or because you may disagree with my analysis on Rey, that doesn't mean you're a hateful person. Now, if you're in the comments telling me to take a bath with a toaster, I think I can classify that as hate. I want to make it clear that these comments don't make me upset. I find some of these insults kind of creative, to be honest, but the point I'm trying to make is don't be like these people. There's a reason why since the creation of social media, depression has been at an all-time high amongst younger people. Leaving a hateful comment gives you pleasure, but not joy. Here's George Lucas explaining the difference between pleasure and joy.
Happiness is pleasure, and happiness is joy. It can be either one. You add them up and it sort of falls under the uber category of happiness. Pleasure is short-lived. It lasts an hour, lasts a minute, lasts a month. And it peaks and then goes down. It peaks very high. But on the other hand is joy. And joy is a thing that doesn't go as high as pleasure in terms of your emotional reaction. But it stays with you. Joy is something you can recall. Pleasure you can't. So the secret is that even though it's not as intense as the pleasure, the joy will last you a lot longer. Joy lasts forever. Pleasure is purely self-centered. It's all about your pleasure. It's about you. It's a selfish, self-centered emotion that's created by a self-centered motive of greed. Joy is compassion. Joy is giving yourself to somebody else or something else. And it's a kind of thing that is, in its subtlety and lowness, much more powerful than pleasure. If you get hung up on pleasure, you're doomed. If you pursue joy, you will find everlasting happiness. So.
Hate is pleasure, love is joy. George Lucas has said himself that he makes Star Wars not for the critics who trash on his films, but for the kids who dream of living in a galaxy far, far away. I hope this video makes somewhat of a difference in the way people act online. Probably not, but that doesn't mean I'm not going to try. I created this YouTube channel because I want to save Star Wars. I see the toxicity online, especially towards those who love Disney Star Wars, and I want to provide content for them. I want fans of the sequel trilogy to know that there is someone out there willing to make a 2.5 hour long video defending Rey. I want people to know that the Claude Squad is a community where I will defend and love Star Wars. Now that doesn't mean I won't be critical of the movies, but I will do it in a way that shows that I love Star Wars. But all of this is why I think there is a lot you can learn from Rose Tico about happiness. Thank you so much for watching this video. If you want to see more of me, then you can go check me out on the Chatoween show that we do about every Friday. If you can't watch us on YouTube, we are available on Spotify and iTunes, so you can get the audio-only version there. I'm also on a new podcast called Green Milk Radio, so if you want to see more of me, I will put a link to that and the Chatoween show in the description. And one last thing, for those of you who don't know, I will be doing watch parties of The Mandalorian every Friday at 12 PM Eastern Time. So if you're interested in watching my reaction to all the new episodes and just hanging out, that's when you can find me on this channel. I hope everyone has a wonderful day. Don't forget to like and subscribe and all that stuff. It does help out the channel, by the way. Don't forget to unite the Claude Squad, and I'll see you guys next time.